Thanks for pressing play. We have an extraordinary episode with John Macdonald, the founder of Semi-Handmade, and this story is going to open a whole new set of thinking for you on how you can really niche down. This episode, as always, is brought to you by our good friends at Oracle NetSuite. Check out netsuite.com/legends to turbocharge your growth. All right, John Macdonald. This episode is smart and inspiring. You will learn how a one-time struggling screenwriter and actor niched down, how he was open to a whole new career opportunity and a whole new entrepreneurial opportunity, and ultimately has become the category king of the IKEA hacking movement, and you'll learn what that is. He teaches us how to be open, how to be able to see opportunity where maybe we didn't before, and how to take action on new thinking. And most of all, John teaches all of us why we should never give up on ourselves. All right. The Ramones said, hey ho, let's go, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Hello, my legendary friends. Welcome to another fantastic episode of Legends and Losers. How are you? I hope you're doing great. It's been a very exciting time around here. Heather and I are in the process of launching our new book, Niche Down, How to Become Legendary by Being Different. And I would encourage you, if you're interested, to go to nichedownbook.com, and we'll keep you updated with what's going on with the book, how to get the book, and the free bonuses and Scooby snacks you get if you're willing to pick up a copy, nichedownbook.com. All right. This episode sits at the heart of our mission to hack the best minds in Silicon Valley and beyond. We want to learn from people who struggle to design a legendary business and a legendary life. If you're a longtime listener, you know that our goal is to allow you to eavesdrop on real conversations where we aspire to have authentic dialogues that hopefully you think are worth sharing. And hopefully that's every episode. We are the opposite on Legends and Losers of the traditional, overproduced, contrived, over-edited, inauthentic business interview that really is a collision of the guest's talking points and a prefabricated narrative by the host and some production team. If you want the real shit without the bullshit, that's Legends and Losers. And we have as real a conversation as possible as you can have with an entrepreneur and a truly inspiring guy, John Macdonald. Now, before we get to John, I want to tell you a little bit about our good friends at NetSuite. NetSuite is the platform for growth for entrepreneurial businesses and nonprofits. It's a complete system for every part of your business. Over 40,000 organizations worldwide use NetSuite. NetSuite's actually 10 times larger than its nearest competitor. So that means you have 10 times the resources working for you. NetSuite's also owned by one of the largest technology companies on planet Earth, Oracle. And so they bring a tremendous infrastructure, a tremendous set of functionality and capability. The other thing is, even though NetSuite is so big, NetSuite was started by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. And they have a broad range of functionality across most industries. So NetSuite works the way your business does. It's built from the ground up for the cloud, and it lowers and reduces IT cost and hassle with one data model from the back office to your customer records to ultimately the front end omni-channel commerce. NetSuite is #1 in cloud ERP, and it's the system entrepreneurs have been waiting for. And NetSuite has a free offer for Legends and Losers listeners. Check out netsuite.com/legends, and when you go there, you'll be able to set up a free 1-hour growth review with the expert in your industry to help you uncover opportunities and overcome barriers to growth. So check out netsuite.com/legends. All right, today, John Macdonald. He's also featured and highlighted in our new book, Niche Down. And the reason we wanted to do this episode, the reason we wanted to include him in the book, is John has done something extraordinary. He's the founder of an outfit called Semi-Handmade. And what they do is they build custom front ends to, if you will, IKEA back ends. So think about your kitchen cabinetry as an example. And IKEA offers a system, and John and his team builds beautiful front ends to that system. And so you can have the cost effectiveness of IKEA, but have a super ding-dong looking kitchen. If you want more on John and Semi-Handmade, check out the show notes at legendsandlosers.com. And now strap yourself in for this extraordinary conversation with the legendary John Macdonald.
Business is great. I mean, business is. I just came back from a 3 day entrepreneur kind of boot camp program that I do a couple times a year, and kind of what I told them. I never thought I'd be doing this. Number one, and I never thought that we would have the growth and success that we've had. It's extraordinary.
And so why did you not think you'd be doing this?
Well, I mean, my story, which I'm sure I'm happy to tell to anyone, but a lot of people here are sick of hearing, is I moved to LA out of college almost 30 years ago with the sort of vague idea that I would work in the film business. I didn't know specifically what it would be. I thought maybe I would be an actor after taking a couple acting classes. And I sort of landed here and ended up living with a family friend and kind of got my first jobs in the film business that way.
And I thought I read somewhere, were you also working as a writer? Did I remember?
Well, yeah, I was. So yeah, I moved in with a family friend who I'd never met. She picked me up at the airport, LAX, took me to her house in Beverly Hills. So she was the head waitress for about 40 years at a place called Nate and Al's, which is one of the most famous, talk about legendary, one of the most famous delis in Beverly Hills or anywhere. And she knew everyone in the film business. And so she got me a job in the mailroom at Paramount Studios. I was delivering mail in 1990 to the production companies, Eddie Murphy, Tom Cruise, people like that. And from that, I got some production assistant jobs, basically being a gopher. And while I was doing that, I sort of took up writing. We used to, at Paramount Studios, we used to dumpster dive back behind the story department and find all kinds of scripts. So we'd find lousy scripts, and we'd find, it's funny, J.J. Abrams was, I think he's probably my age, about 50, 51. And that was when he was selling these $1 million scripts a couple times a week, it seemed like. And we'd read them. And so because screenwriting is pretty technical, we, a bunch of us taught ourselves. I don't know how well we taught ourselves, but we did. And so for the next,
I hate to interrupt you, John, but you taught yourself by reading the throwaway.
Just reading scripts, buying books, how to make a good script great. There's all these Adventures in the Screen Trade by William Goldman, all the kind of Bibles. And so it is, if you're not an actor in LA, you're a writer or you're something else. And so I became one of those people, and I did production for the next couple of years, basically being an assistant and doing writing on the side. And probably, I guess, into my mid to late 20s, I started waiting tables. And so for the next 15 years, I was waiting tables in Hollywood and Hancock Park, and at night and writing during the day. And I got to be a good writer. And it is a point of pride that I was a writer who actually wrote, because I know a lot of people that enjoyed the thought of being a writer and sitting in a Starbucks all day in front of a laptop. But I was pretty good, and I was hip-pocketed by a decent agent, and never got any jobs, never made any money. Through my late 20s and early 30s, I probably became, I would say, the angriest waiter in Hollywood. I was a great waiter, but I was a tough waiter. And so I worked at a sushi bar up on Beechwood across from the Scientology Center.
What's a tough waiter? What does that mean, John?
Just that, I worked in a place where the owner was never there. And so it was myself and 3 or 4 waitresses at a time. And if a customer ever gave me shit, we'd give it right back. And I was great. I was a great waiter, but that doesn't mean I didn't have some run-ins with customers. And it's sort of, which is not great in terms of customer service. And I honestly did carry that over. When I started my business, I definitely had some run-ins with architects and homeowners and designers. Because that's just my personality. I'm extremely passionate, at times misguided in that passion. But yeah, I was waiting tables to my mid-30s.
Wow.
And then I realized it's time to do something with my life.
And had you always, were you a carpenter, or did you work with wood, or sort of where was that in your past before Semi-Handmade?
Yeah, there was nowhere in my past. And that's kind of why when I tell my story, I do make it clear. If I made a list of 50 jobs I'd end up doing, this would not have been one of them. As a kid, I didn't want to cut the grass. I didn't want to work with tools. I didn't want to, I mean, I played sports and did other things. Um, and my mom had done refinishing of antiques and things like that when I was a kid. And for some reason, again, I don't even know why, in my early 30s, I started going to antique stores and buying old chairs and desks and things and bringing them home and refinishing them and then taking them out to swap meets. I used to rent a booth at like the Fairfax swap meet in Hollywood every Sunday and bring out old like oak desk chairs and try and sell them for 50, $60. And at a certain point, a couple months into it, my friend said, "Why don't you make furniture?" And it had never occurred to me. I mean, it hadn't. And so I said, okay. And so I started to buy tools and teach myself. But as is typical with me, I'm pretty, once I get my mind to it, I'm impatient, sort of throw caution to the wind. And I finally found a woodworking program locally at Cerritos College, which is exceptional woodworking and
Is that
actually
like a
well.
community college, John?
Yeah, so it's a community college. And that was at a time where whether it wasn't specific to Southern California, but a lot of schools, it seemed like, were getting rid of their wood shops because of liability. I think it was less about interest, but liability and insurance reasons. And so I
I've
found
heard there's a bit of decline in some of the trade education.
well, I think
Is
trades in
that
general.
true?
I mean, I absolutely think so. And I do think that's a direction we need to move more towards because it's an honest, creative way to make a living. And certainly like at Cerritos, woodworking, even now, and welding is really competitive. You can't get in unless you want to go into that trade.
Oh, that's cool, man.
Yeah, it is cool. And so, I mean, I'd love to learn how to weld. I mean, I've always thought that. So anyway, so I was teaching myself, buying tools, and I signed up. The first class you take at Cerritos is shop safety. It's like, woodworking 101. And a week before I was supposed to start classes, I bought a bandsaw, a Grizzly bandsaw, and I opened it up, threw out the instructions, put up the guard all the way so the blade was fully exposed, and I cut off 2 fingers within like an hour. I mean, it was
Oh
pretty
my
amazing.
God, John.
Yeah. So it
And
was,
when you say cut off, what do you mean cut
well, I
off?
mean, I still have, you can sort of
Okay.
see, I have half a pinky
Wow.
and the ring finger. They had to reattach the nerve and a tendon. So that was the bigger issue. Um, but it was traumatic. And but the thing was, I knew exactly why I did it. I know in the years past, I know guys and girls, incredible woodworkers that have accidents, and they're smart and they're safe, and it just happens. I was a complete idiot, and so I knew why I did it. So what I did was, honestly, I had the stuff reattached that they could fix. I wrapped my hand in a bag, and I kept waiting tables for the next 7 weeks, actually, with a hand in a bag. And I started taking a woodworking class a week later. I didn't miss a class, and it kind of became a running joke. But I just kept working. I got good at it. I ended up taking 2 more classes: a furniture class and how to make kitchen cabinets class. And I just sort of threw myself into it. And so again,
What was it you liked about it, John?
I don't know. I mean, I think to be honest, Chris, I mean, part of it was it wasn't writing. It was, I told someone the other day, the greatest relief of maybe the last 20 years was when I let go of what I thought I wanted when I moved down here. And I'm honest about the fact that I wanted to be rich and famous. I mean, whether I could do it as an actor or a writer, I didn't care, but that was a huge motivating factor, which in hindsight is crazy. But that did motivate me. And
Why do
so,
you think it's crazy now
well,
to want to be rich and famous?
not that it's, I mean, let me clarify that. I do want to be successful and respected. Crazy in the sense that I wasn't prepared for it. I remember, like, it was a quote from, I think it was Spencer Tracy, and I may be getting it wrong, but it was the idea, something like, you can't want to be an actor. You've got to have to be an actor. It has to be all consuming, right? And we can say that about a lot of things, especially creative pursuits or athletic pursuits or whatever. You got to be 110%. And so I wasn't that. And it took me a long time to realize that. And so part of why I became a bitter waiter and an angry person in my early 30s was just not being happy and feeling like, how do I get out of this? And so, so the answer to come back around, yeah, when I found woodworking, it was something that was creative. I did have control over it. I realized I could get good at it. And that was exciting.
And had you not known you were good with your hands before?
Yeah, certainly, because there was nothing in my background to suggest that. Um, I mean, I
So
always,
I just want to get the picture right. So you're in your late 30s. You're
yeah, mid 30s, yeah, mid
mid
30s
30s. You're quote unquote the angriest waiter in
in
LA,
Hollywood. Yeah,
and you cut your fingers off pretty quickly here.
yeah,
But you don't miss a beat in terms of
right,
your education. You're
yeah,
drawn to woodworking for some reason,
yeah.
and you just that whatever that thing was that drew you just kept drawing you. Is that what happened in the
Yeah,
beginning?
and I started making friends, and it was like a small community of woodworkers. And I mean, yeah, it's interesting looking back because um, probably like a lot of people, I have a tendency to sort of gloss over the steps, and it's only when you sort of. I just gave someone a tour of the shop about an hour ago, a friend of mine, and I said, "This is the shop that I lived in for a year when I got divorced, and I slept on an IKEA sofa." And I didn't have a shower. So at 40, I didn't have a shower. So I had to go to the 24-hour fitness to take showers. And I got in the best shape of my life because I was like, well, I got to go take a shower. So why don't I go work out? Um, but the point is, and a lot of people here are sick of hearing that story. But yeah, into my mid and late 30s, I just kept working at it. One thing I always did, and it continues to benefit us, is I always, whether it's a Carnegie or whatever kind of thing, I always befriended people that were better than me. I always asked a lot of questions, and I continue to. And it was always important to build friendships and relationships with other people in other companies. And so, and from that, I started doing design shows. And Dwell magazine, back when it was really not as much today, but really was an iconic brand 15 years ago or more. They used to have a design show in LA, and they still do. And I would go there and spend $4,000 for a 10 by 10 booth for 3 days to show my custom furniture. And it would be me, and then everyone else was a major brand. So it would be Caesar Stone, and it would be KitchenAid, and it would be Wolf or whomever.
And did you have
And
a brand or a company name?
yeah, so at the time the company was called Handmade.
Oh, it
You
was
know,
called Handmade.
it
Okay,
was handmade.
very
I
cool.
kind of had a logo somewhat with my hand, and it was either overly clever or it wasn't. But yeah, and I
Well,
started to
it
get
turned
more.
out to be fortuitous in terms of
Yeah,
where the name landed, right?
exactly. Yeah, it makes sense. The progression. But yeah, I started to network that way with other companies, but also I started to get business. And I would look around and think, I have friends that are better woodworkers than me, and they're not here. And it was because it's like the cliche, or it's probably a fact, really creative people that don't have a mind for business. And I was never precious about it. I knew I was maybe never going to be as great as some of my friends, but I also thought there's a way I can sort of monetize this. And so from these shows, it was around 2008 or 2009 when I was doing custom handmade stuff. A guy came up to me out of the blue and said, "Have you ever thought about making doors for IKEA cabinets?" And I
And
was
was this a guy you knew, or how did you
no,
meet this guy?
it was a stranger. And I mean, I want to put it out in the world if he's out there. I think his name is David Stewart, not Dave Stewart, the musician and producer, but David Stewart. And he's, I think, a pretty well-known photographer, did stuff for Rolling Stone and a lot of really reputable outlets. And he had a girlfriend at the time working for De La Spada, which is a really fantastic furniture company. Anyway, he came up and said, "You ever thought about IKEA doors?" And I said, "No, I don't know what that means." And we talked about it and what a great concept it was. And he thought someone should do it. And that was a Friday, I think. And he came back the next day and we talked more. And I kind of left and didn't do anything for 6 months, still kind of thought about it. And it was at that time when the economy tanked for everybody. And I was living in my shop. I had gotten divorced.
And you were in your mid 40s at this point.
At that point, I was 40. So
40, okay.
I'll be 51. So yeah, around that time, I was probably around 40. And
this idea was just sort of floating around.
it was sort
in
of
the back
sitting
your
there.
head.
I was married. The marriage wasn't working. We ended up getting divorced, and no children at the time. And that was when I moved into my shop. And so I was embarrassed. I was humiliated, and I didn't want to see anybody. And I also felt like, let's just focus on the business. and I didn't know what that was, but I knew I needed to try something new. And so I spent a year um, in that shop, literally. Like I slept on an IKEA sofa purely out of coincidence with my dog Molly, who I still have. And one of those stories, working 80, 90 hours a week and still doing custom work, but I was slowly
What type
starting.
of furniture at that point?
So it was mainly kitchen cabinets. You can make a lot
Okay,
more
so it
money
was
making.
cabinetry.
Yeah, so it was
Yeah.
cabinetry. I was still doing tables and stuff like that, credenzas and media consoles, but a lot
But
more
when
money in
people
kitchen.
upgrade their kitchens or they're building a new house, they go whole hog on the kitchen. Is that
Right.
why?
Yeah, exactly. And so a much higher price point than a table that you could sell for maybe $1,000 or $2,000. And so, and so I would start to convince people, hey, you're going to spend 15 grand in the kitchen. We can save a couple thousand if you do plywood cabinet boxes for the base cabinets, and maybe we'll do some IKEA cabinets for the wall cabinets. And either way, we're going to cover them in beautiful doors and panels that I'll make custom, and you'll never know. And so people started to bite on that. And I think that was also at the time, I did a pretty good sized job with a really lovely woman and incredible architect named Barbara Bester, who's an LA architect and kind of iconic. Did the Beats building for Apple, and she's extremely well known. And so Barbara is one of these people, and I haven't talked to Barbara in a couple of years, but just super generous and cool, and like, let's try it. And so she's someone
I hate to interrupt you, but at the time, were the IKEA folks selling? You tell me if I'm getting the lingo right. The fronts and backs separately, or were they not?
So
like, how did that part work then?
Yeah. So the key always has been their model is basically everything's a la carte. So unlike anyone else, really, in the sort of kitchen cabinetry world, you can just buy the boxes and you can buy the hardware, and you don't have to buy the doors. So IKEA lets you not buy doors.
Yeah, it almost seems, because I think I shared this with you over email.
Yeah.
My wife is a customer of yours.
Oh, okay.
Because our side hustle is we like to build houses, and when I say we, I mean she.
Right.
And that's how I discovered you and the company, of course. And what she has shared with me is the IKEA folks are very kind of open and supportive. Like the minute she said, well, we're working with Semi-Handmade, they're like, oh, great. Then And so that seems to be a very novel way of thinking in this industry. Is that the case?
Yeah, I would say that's nice to hear, and I appreciate that. I would say that it's taken them corporate wise, the corporate side, they're a lot less. They've been a lot less accommodating. They've sort of come to this kicking and screaming. We certainly, again, the key is they let you not buy doors. So you can make your doors, I can make your doors, a competitor can make your doors, or you can buy theirs. But that doesn't mean they want you to do that. And so initially there was resistance. There wasn't IKEA ecosystem cropping up of people like myself, a company called BEMS based out of Stockholm that makes beautiful slipcovers for IKEA sofas and chairs. And the woman that started that, Leslie, is really kind of I call her the godmother, for lack of a better thing, of all this ecosystem.
Yeah.
But for the first couple of years, we fought with it. I mean, IKEA, famously, if people Google us in 2015, they had us removed from a show, a very ugly incident that frankly involved some alcohol on their part. That was kind of embarrassing and a mistake on their part. And I took to social media and said, here's what happened. We've been doing this for X number of years. By and large, IKEA loves us, but we had a bad run-in. We still support the company. And people were upset. And that is the world we live in the sense that you have to listen to your customers. And so to get back to what you were saying, they've become more open source, and they've accepted companies like ours. But it has taken some time. And I know they're a lot more open to it in Europe than they are in the US right now. It's taking them a while to catch up. But frankly, people buy IKEA kitchens because of companies like ours, and we work with a lot of celebrities because it's a great system. The boxes are great. The hardware is Bloom, which is the best in the world. And then we let you get creative with the doors.
And you are, because I'm grade 10 math was the hardest 12 years of my life.
Yeah.
If we buy custom fronts from you, their
Yeah.
system for, let's just call it an average American kitchen, how much cheaper does that end up being than if we had done a custom cabinetry in the kind of the traditional paradigm?
If you did, it depends on the market, but I would say it's probably in a place like LA, it's probably 30 to 40% less. Now, as we've grown and been fortunate to grow, when I first started and I was still making the doors myself, we were much more custom, and our price point was a lot higher than IKEA's typical doors. Because the fact is, and I always say, when someone says, are you guys in competition? There's no competing with IKEA. It's absurd. We sort of, someone put it, we kind of hug the bear. We kind of, they're a behemoth, and we kind of, they bat us around a little bit, and we try to stay out of
If
their
the
way.
bear wants to go left, sometimes you need to just go left, right?
Yeah, and the truth is, we have butt heads with them in the past, and we worked it out, and our relationship now is as good as it's ever been. There's some really lovely people at IKEA that I've dealt with. But anyway, so but IKEA literally has doors that are $1. I mean, like but they're economies of scale. They have doors that are $1, and our cheapest door may be, say, $50 in that size.
Yeah.
But as we've grown and we've become, frankly, less customizable and gone to more sort of closer to their price point, yeah, I mean, prices have come down. I mean, the average IKEA customer, semi-handmade is a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
And
you are on a percentage basis. If I take the average fronts for an IKEA kitchen, how much more are you percentage-wise typically?
Yeah, for their mid-range doors, we're almost at the same price point.
Oh wow!
Yeah, but we've learned to manage expectations and be really clear about that, because and so one thing we do is ask them, if you're looking at IKEA, what style of door are you looking at?
Right.
So we know right to start, if they're looking at one that's really lower price, that we can't match that.
And you're not a company that is trying to compete on price in that.
Well, that's what I mean.
Right?
No, and I knew that right away. And frankly, look, everything's made in the U.S. We take a lot of pride in that. And it costs more to do. And so you get some. And I've always said, when I was doing custom, if you as a homeowner, a customer, if you've got a price in mind, you'll find somebody that can match that price. You will. I can say this kitchen's going to be 8, and you 8,000, and my buddy can say it's 7, and he'll get the job. So it's the same kind of thing. You do get pushback with people say, well, why should I come to you? It should cost you less. And I'm like, it's just not possible,
Yeah.
And so there are smaller companies that have sprung up. There are, frankly, there are probably 8 to 10 companies in the U.S. that do this. Maybe a third of them used to work with us and there's nothing proprietary about the idea. So now they do it on a much smaller scale. And I've always been fine with that.
Well, in a sense, they're helping you to build the category, right?
I mean, look, it's like my partner Ivan would say, rising tide lifts all boats. So it just builds the credibility exactly of what we're doing. As far as I can tell, all the competitors, it's all quality stuff too. We just do it at a much bigger scale.
Yeah. So what year do you consider Semi-Handmade really starting?
So 2011, so 2000, again, 9 and 10, I'm still trying to convince people. And I'd have to go back.
Was that a slog? Was that hard?
No, it wasn't, because most people got it. I mean, they really did. I mean, I'm looking back, there really wasn't any pushback. And I think in 2010, I mean, I guess I incorporated 2011, I'm thinking. But in 2010, from doing a show, I did get an amazing write-up in the LA Times. And that was from doing, I think, Dwell and Design. And a really kind and kind of amazing person named Lisa Boone, who's always been incredibly supportive of me and the company, wrote about us. And we got a lot of exposure. And that was a really big deal. And that's when the phone started to ring. It's funny because
so that initial PR made a big difference.
Yeah, and the only downside of that is we realized recently, because it's on the World Wide Web, it's out there. That article has my personal phone number on there, which is still my personal phone number. So I get a lot of calls, people. called me up saying, "Hey, I want to order some kitchen cabinet doors."
It's like your cell phone number?
Yeah, it's my cell phone number because that's what I used, and
Yeah, right.
I'm not going to change it. And I was like, how do people keep calling me? And then they're like, oh, there's that 2010 article, and I don't know how you change it. So anyway, so it's a blessing and a curse, and I blame Lisa for that. But anyway, yeah, people started. So 9 and 10, kind of getting my feet wet, figuring it out. 11 is when I incorporated, and 11 is when I was looking at the numbers and kind of going backwards. It just started to double every year in terms of. And that's when I started to take on people. And my partner, Ivan, came on, I guess, a little bit before that time. And we were just working together at the time. And it was like going from like, I can just remember maybe doing like 125,000 in sales like in 2010. And then it was 250 in 11. And then it was 500 in 12. And then it was 1,000,002. And it kept doubling. And with that, the shift was 100% custom, 0 IKEA, 90-10. 80-20. And so probably around 2013 was when I was able to get out of any kind of custom work at all. And it was 100% IKEA.
It's so incredible. I mean, and I want to get back to the journey in a sec, but as you look at it today, John, and I'm thinking about what you just shared with me.
Yeah.
Your life is remarkable that you were where you were and you are where you are. Is that how you feel?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. I mean, I do an amazing entrepreneur group, and we were kind of doing a 3-day thing at UCLA. And I was out the other night, and I told this story, which I kind of forget about. Like post 9/11, when I was like 31 or 32, I wanted to do something with my life. I wanted to have some sort of meaning and purpose. And I always liked like police procedurals and reading books, and I loved all that stuff, true crime. And so I decided to join the LAPD. And I was a very bright guy. I ended up not getting in. And I told a long story, which I won't tell here, about, a polygraph test that I had to take. And it was humiliating because everyone in my life knew that I was trying to do this. And at that point, I thought, well, shit, it's $60,000 a year, plus I can make overtime, plus I can, have a purpose. And I didn't get in, and I was humiliated for the specific reasons I didn't get in, because frankly, the level of competition was not high as far as I was concerned. And I had to tell everybody. But the reality is, if I would have, I say this kind of jokingly, I would have either shot someone or shot myself. I mean, I'm too emotional. And so I can't even imagine what my life would have been if I'd done that. So to answer your question, because it's like, it's remarkable. It doesn't mean that I don't spend a lot of time, and maybe I spend too much time thinking, well, shit, if I would have started this at 21, where would I be? If I knew exactly what I wanted then, I wouldn't be here. But I'm smart enough to know it's a waste of time. But yeah, I mean, and I always tell people, shit, man, I didn't know what I was doing at 40. And so anything is possible if you're open to it.
Well, I don't want to be corny, but could you say that again?
Yeah, just that. And I know I say this because I'm so hyper self-aware. It's ridiculous because I'm always listening to myself talk. And I know a lot of people around here at the company are understandably tired of hearing it. But I just think if you're willing to sort of be vulnerable, anything's possible. I mean, I used to say in interviews that the two biggest motivating factors for me are fear and desperation. Like I'm 35. I'm a really smart guy. All my friends have really steady, seemingly stable lives, and I don't. And I'll be 51. I've got a almost 7-year-old son who is my entire world. And yeah, but at 35, I was 32 or 38. I was, it was looking bleak.
Yeah. And you were feeling it, that you felt that pressure and that disappointment in yourself.
Yeah. And part of it was, and I'm getting emotional because I'm an emotional person, but my parents have always, I'm blessed to still have them, but have always been unbelievably supportive. And I look back and say, well, at 21, I'm like, hey, I want to be a movie star. And they were like, okay. And like, I don't really remember conversations where, what the hell are you talking about? It was
Yeah.
okay. We'll support you, and they continue to do that. My dad and mom wrote a couple of checks that keep me afloat in the early days. That and I had a good friend. I have a good friend who did the same thing, and I have to remind myself too. He gave me a big loan that he didn't have to, and he did.
It's amazing. You hear all this stuff, particularly in the entrepreneur, I call it the entrepreneur porn world, all the
Yeah.
magazines and podcasts and all this
Right.
stuff. And you can easily get this impression, and you hear these phrases, a self-made man, a self-made woman, and all this sort of stuff. But the truth is, nobody's self-made, right? You had a lot of help along the way.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like, very much like me, you had help at places and times where there was no good reason that anybody should have maybe helped you or bet on you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was in a car yesterday driving. It's a much bigger thing, but part of this group I was in, we did some volunteer work at Homeboy Industries in downtown LA. Like, absolutely astounding what they've done for gang-related individuals. But we're talking about our stories, and that's exactly what we're talking about. And I remember, not to get political, former president gave a commencement speech a number of years ago, and there was some pushback from some people because I think the point was you're at an amazing university and you're graduating, but you didn't get here on your own. And if you think you did, you're crazy. And when you actually take the time to think, it's like what you said, Chris. It's like I was talking about a woman who was an older, lovely English woman, probably early 70s, who was Frank Mancuso at the time at Paramount Studios was the chairman in 1990. And this was his like assistant. And this woman was this 21-year-old dumb kid in shorts and a Paramount Mail Services shirt. And I would ask her questions all the time, and she just took a liking to me. And she's the one that got me this interview, that got me hired on a movie, and she didn't have to do that. And the woman that I live with, Kay Coleman, who is an absolute, talking about, again, a legend in Beverly Hills. She was like the unofficial mayor of Beverly Hills for a long time, working out of Nate Now's, the most famous deli out here. And she took me in when didn't know me, literally. I lived with her and her husband in a 2-bedroom apartment on Crescent Drive in Beverly Hills. And my biggest regret, frankly, with Kay, who unfortunately passed away maybe 7 or 8 years ago, is at the time when I lived with her for almost a year and moved out, I wasn't mature enough or a big enough person, frankly, to really appreciate what she'd done for me. And I let our relationship lapse.
Right.
But Kay is the kind of person who, she was a tough lady, tough Irish parents outside Philadelphia. You couldn't tell Kay Coleman, I love you, because she'd be like, shut the hell up, John McDonald. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there was no one that's more loved than this woman. So again, just two people like you said.
And she knew you loved her.
Yeah. But also probably smart enough to know that, like a parent, like, it's got to hurt sometimes when your kid doesn't appreciate you, but you also understand that that's part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you just got to hang in the pocket with someone, don't you?
Exactly. Right.
And so, was there anything in your past that would lead you to believe that you could build what sounds like a very highly scalable company? And you are what I would call an intuitive category designer. And what I mean by that is you designed a whole new category, in this case of furniture, a new niche that prior to you really didn't exist.
Right.
Was there anything in your past that led you to believe that you would do this or you could do this?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure if I spent a lot of time, I could try and find some clues. I mean, honestly, nothing comes to mind. I know, I always had a sense that I would do, something of, I don't know, of some note. I mean, I've always had I used to say, I don't have a superior or inferiority complex. It's a superiority, just in the sense that I mean, not to be a jerk, but, I expect a lot out of myself. And I've learned to not expect as much out of other people, in the sense that my standards are ridiculous and it's not fair to hold other people to them. So to answer your question, I mean, nothing specific. I knew I would be doing something. I do feel like this is where I should have been. Um, and I also know that my friends, I've got six guys, I think it's 6 or 7, I went to high school with back in Philadelphia that I'm incredibly close to. And they watched me, my ups and downs, and were always supportive. And I do wonder if a few of them are like, how did he end up doing this? I mean, they are genuinely happy for me and impressed and proud. But rightfully, some of them are like, I don't know how this sort of ended up this way.
There are people in your life who go, how did that guy do this?
Right. Considering the path,
Yeah,
if I would, again, if I would have done this from the start, it would have made more sense.
yeah.
But they are people that, we have people that I've known since I'm, 15, 35 years. The beauty of those friendships are, I was telling somebody, it's like you get back together and it's like nothing, the years haven't passed. We can still act like 15-year-olds,
Yeah.
and we have pretty stable lives.
So, what you've done would I think still be interesting if you were a single or very small, maybe a
Right.
few people doing some really cool, woodworking things or cabinetry or something like that. I think your story would still be a fascinating one, both from a business
Right.
perspective and a human perspective. But you've built a business that's scaled. You're on all
Yeah.
the hot lists.
Right.
Are you still doubling, or the growth? I mean, I
Yeah.
don't.
So at double, I mean, we're still at 25 to 30% growth. So
Yeah.
it went from, and I'm comfortable talking about it just because I want people to be inspired or whatever. And I say that, the caveat being, like, again, I just left this entrepreneur thing I keep referencing, where I'm constantly humbled by people that have $150 million companies. And I'm like, Jesus, we got a long way to go. But yeah, it was like, it was 500 to 1.2 to 1.2 to 2.7, 2.7, 3.8, 3.8 to 6.9 2 years ago, just under 10 last year. And then we'll hopefully do, close to 13 million this year. And so in terms of the path and scalability, I always say, I never thought it would get to where it's gotten. And I'm not going to lie, I do want to see how far it can go. I want to do it smartly. Um, and but I'm also aware that it's getting to a point where I'm going to need to step away day to day, and I'm not the person to get us to a significant level.
So do
I
you
think.
you think about bringing in a COO or even a
Yeah,
CEO, or what do you
yeah. See, I
what do you
mean,
think?
yeah, COO or CFO. I mean, I'm good. I'm good at the creative things. I'm good at the relationships, the brand building, things like that. And what I realize in doing these programs, as someone said, is we are more a brand than a product. I don't want to be just the company that makes doors for IKEA. I mean, there is a certain risk to that when you put all your eggs in one basket. And with the brand awareness that we have in our home goods space, whatever you want to call it, remodeling space, there are opportunities that are coming now in terms of joint ventures and co-branding, and licensing that I want to take advantage of.
Well, and I've tried to do my homework on you. It sounds
Yeah,
like you've had some real breakthroughs in we talk about it around here as creating an ecosystem that
yeah,
if you want to be the company that designs and dominates a new niche, one of the things is the partnerships of the companies around you. Of course, you're in
right,
IKEA's ecosystem,
right.
but at least from some of the reading I've done about you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, you've also created an ecosystem around Semi-Handmade.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really thought about it. Yeah, certainly we revolve. IKEA is the Death Star, or for lack of a better term, or it's the mothership, and we're sort of orbiting it. And the example I often use is, in the '90s, I guess mid to late '90s, when the media companies were resistant to YouTube, pirating, whether it was piracy or having content up there for free. And companies like Viacom were adamant about, we got to get paid for that, and this is illegal, and all these things, and not seeing the value in me as a consumer. I love NCIS, so I'm going to upload a scene from NCIS, and that's going to get a lot of eyeballs on it, and that's going to make maybe other people watch NCIS. And a lot of people in that sort of industry didn't see it that way. Like, we're losing money. And so I think IKEA saw that too. IKEA saw the value in companies like ours, companies like BEMS that makes the slipcovers, bringing more people to the equation. And that's why IKEA, I mean, look, they just signed a deal with Lego, Adidas, and Sonos, three completely different
Wow.
companies, industries, because they don't want to be just the furniture people anymore.
Yeah. Well, and I could tell you, look, we're just a focus group of one, but the homes my wife likes to build
Mm-hmm.
are beautiful custom homes, homes that you rarely see on the market because typically home builders won't build, in other words, to get a home like she's going to create, you
Right.
typically have to hire people to do it because, the house we're doing right now that has your products in it has
Uh-huh.
has a copper roof on it.
Oh, wow.
Well, nobody fucking builds a copper roof spec house, right?
Right.
Unless you're her. And
Right.
so, anyway, I share that with you for context. There's no way she would have IKEA product in this kitchen. Like,
Right.
not a chance. And she
Right.
would have spent the money to do the whole high end thing and all that. But the
Right.
fact that she could get all of the visual beauty and functional beauty of an incredible custom high end kitchen with the cost and the simplicity and the usability of their quote unquote system.
Right.
She came when she discovered you guys,
Yeah.
she was like, I had to scrape her off the ceiling. Right.
Really?
And yeah,
Yeah.
and we ended up right around Thanksgiving, John. We happened to be going down to Palm Springs with the family to celebrate.
Oh,
And of
nice.
course, you guys have a showroom there. And she
Showroom.
was in the early stages of kind of doing the dance with you folks. And,
Yeah.
her and her sister Mary went. And I mean, they came back and, they spent half the dinner that night just gushing about
Oh, wow.
the awesomeness. And, we're now in the process of we're about to install the kitchen. And I mean,
Oh,
she
great.
can't wait. Your shit's here. It's like,
Okay.
and so I guess all I'm saying is from an IKEA perspective,
Yeah.
she's a customer they never would have had.
Right.
And from a joy and happiness and stoked and whatever other words you want to use perspective
Yeah.
as a home designer and builder, like
Right.
she thinks discovering you is
Yeah.
like one of the greatest things that she's done.
Wow. Yeah, no, Christopher, I appreciate. I mean, I'd love to meet your wife and thank her personally. I mean, that's a amazing
We'd
thing.
love to come see you, actually.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I mean, we bought a building in Monrovia, a 27,000 square foot building. We're moving basically almost all our company there in the next year, with the showroom and everything. But yeah, I mean, look, that's one of the downsides of us growing, or maybe me dealing with us growing, is getting away from that, getting away from hearing, like being available to hear those really kind words and taking it in and I don't know, appreciating it. I've spent so much time like, what's next? And I think I'll always be that way. I'm so worried about the other shoe to drop or whatever, that I don't have time to sort of listen to that and be moved. And it is when people like your wife, or when I hear a story about, a guy or girl working in an IKEA in Denver, and a homeowner says, well, they were just raving about you. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this person doesn't know me, doesn't know the company. Maybe they never even dealt with us. They're just through word of mouth just selling our stuff. And yeah, I mean, that's an amazing thing.
Well, and
Yeah,
not to interrupt you, John, but I
yeah,
mean, I, she could tell you better than I could. But if she's told 20 people about you, I wouldn't be
yeah.
surprised. I mean,
No, I mean,
and I've told a ton of people about you because of her
yeah,
excitement. And also, I think you're an example of what, and I've spent a lot of time and money researching this,
yeah,
what legendary entrepreneurs do.
yeah,
Legendary entrepreneurs don't compete in a traditional sense. They
right.
proactively position themselves in a niche that they can own and dominate. And by hook or by crook, you found this niche, you've
Mm-hmm.
evangelized it, you named your company. Listen, I'm a 3-time public company CMO. I get to say a few things about marketing. The
Right.
name of your company and brand is fucking genius
Thank
because
you.
it makes you stop. What does that even mean? And
Right.
that then leads to the story. And I can tell we call that story a point of view.
Yeah.
I can tell your point of view story because I know it because my
Yeah.
wife told me. And
Yeah.
so you did all the things that legendary entrepreneurs do to carve out a whole new niche. And you've executed on the delivery side to continuously grow the business. I mean, what I'm trying to tell you, John, is you're a great fucking entrepreneur,
Thank
buddy.
you. Well, yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. I kind of don't know how to respond other than to be honest and say I would be lying if I said there was a direct, this was a master plan. Um, Definitely things aligned. I mean, I do believe in putting yourself in good positions. And yeah, it's interesting. Thank you. It's the word of mouth thing, through social media, through whatever, through person to person direct contact, like you're saying, telling friends is extraordinary, and it never ceases to amaze me. And even when we still do design shows, and I kind of stay away from talking to people a lot of times, and I'd rather just sort of lurk around and see what people are saying. It's amazing. People will see our sign and they smile, or they think that's such an amazing idea, and it is. And again, I'm just like, yeah, I can't take really credit for it. I mean, I can take credit for busting my ass, for sure, and having people around me that are equally committed or more so. But part of that is
But
just
you were smart enough to know to not let the idea go. There was something about
right.
that idea that cooked in your head, right?
Yeah, but it is kind of what we're saying. Things just started to take off, and one of the key things for us too was when we worked with designer who we have a line of doors with, an amazing woman named Sarah Sherman Samuel, and she kind of came to us in 2013 and was doing a remodel down in Venice, and wanted to buy some doors, and kind of did this amazing kitchen, and it became this iconic thing and went viral. And to this day, I always kind of joke with her, like, that people should be paying her royalties because so many people knock her off. I mean, and she's the most, one of the many amazing things about Sarah, she is as humble and sort of decent and honest as anybody I know. And and that kind of stuff embarrasses her. And so it started to steamroll from there. We started to get these write-ups. Remodelista, which is a great home blog, picked us up, and then Yahoo picked it up, and then it just took off. And then it was more and more people coming out of the woodwork, more and more bloggers saying, "Hey, I want to work with you." And I was always smart about giving stuff away. I mean, just saying, you don't have to write about us, but if you like it, please do. And so people did. And I always reached out to different news outlets. And it helps to have really good shit. I mean, the product is key. You can think I'm charming or an asshole or both, but
or handsome.
Yeah, or yeah. I mean, at times, not as handsome as I think I am when I see certain pictures.
Yeah, exactly. I
But
recently turned 50 as well, John, and every
oh,
once in a while you look in the, I don't know if you have this experience, I'll be brushing my teeth or something, I'll look in the mirror and I'll go, when did somebody put a picture of Dennis Hopper in the bathroom?
there you go. Well, that isn't the worst thing because Dennis Hopper is pretty cool. But yeah, no, I wouldn't say constantly, but there are times where you think you look pretty great, and then you see a picture and you're like, shit, is that how I looked? But anyway. Yeah, so we started to do collaborations. I started reaching out to not only designers and bloggers, but also other companies that I admired. Companies like Plywood, which is an amazing plywood company, and Stickwood, which is a peel and stick they kind of created that kind of space of peel and stick real wood wall coverings, and different artists and stuff, and licensing artwork to print on, to actually print on doors. And got a lot of attention that way, even if it wasn't stuff that people were buying. It's almost like a loss leader that just gets people into the shop, into the showroom, and then they buy a basic door.
Well, and what I love about what you're doing is if you thought about yourself in maybe a more traditional sense, you might not do those things, but you're I don't know, playing on the edges, right? You're experimenting in public. You're trying new shit, and to your point, maybe some of it works, some of it doesn't.
Yeah,
because it's innovative, because you're experimenting, you're getting attention as a result of it.
Right, and that's one thing. I mean, I obviously do have a storytelling background, and I'm talking all the time, and that is something that interests me and something I want to pursue down the road in terms of talking to other people and maybe teaching or whatever, imparting knowledge.
Have you thought about a podcast, John?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of new to podcasts, and I think I would have to have someone who's very strict in terms of keeping me in my lane. But yeah, I mean, I would love, because of the connections I have, I do think I'd love to try a different. God, I mean, just in terms of timing. I mean, I used to always say if I got into some sort of television related things or writing or whatever, the people that I admire the most are someone like Anthony Bourdain, who is just such a singular voice. And I was telling somebody the other day, as good a writer as he was, on TV or better. But just someone like, I don't, I have a point of view, and that's what interests me. And I watch all these home repair shows, and it's all these good looking douchebags like in flannel shirts. And that doesn't interest me.
Look, I'm biased
Yeah.
because of my experience in podcasting. We're about, a year and a quarter old roughly.
Yeah.
And it's been a magical experience. It's been way more successful than I would have thought. But most importantly, I was hoping conversations with guys like you would be awesome, and they have turned out to be. The part I didn't get was how amazing it is to interact with an audience. We have a super engaged audience. They tweet and they email and they, and I have relationships with our listeners. And I thought if you had to do that, it would feel like an obligation or whatever. It's really, really fun. And you guys have been, and I actually want to ask you about this, so savvy about how you use Instagram and social media overall. And given that you have a point of view, you really, I want to encourage you, start a podcast, start a YouTube channel, which by the way, could be one and the same thing. We drop this shit on video as well. Just start podcasting and see what happens.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm thinking about it now. I mean, I do, even just in terms of having a wealth of knowledge, just in terms of technically, in terms of making things and stuff. I do like, I mean, look, the social media stuff, I still do all that. I still do all the Instagram posts. I'm still the crazy person that does that.
Well, and do you take the photos as well? Because
we're fortunate. We get, I mean, very rarely. We do get a lot of, it's amazing the amount of, I'll go through and on a certain day and 6 different homeowners will have tagged us with photos. And that's amazing too. We get a lot of professional photos, a lot of projects through designers get professionally shot anyway. It's important when I'm putting stuff up too, and I've done it a couple times a year. I also do have a certain point of view in terms of, again, not talking about politically, but we're still at a point where I can I want to be authentic to who I am, and I'm less concerned with turning people off, customers. I know that would change when we have if I take on investors and things like that. I don't know. It's interesting. And the world of influencers that we work with is a whole other conversation, because that is, for lack of a better term, pigs at a trough, where people are getting thrown money. And some of those people are really lovely to work with, and some of them are not. And we've gotten to a place where we can be really good in terms of picking and choosing and being specific about deliverables and frankly saying no. And one thing I always tell people is the power. I fucking hate the power of yes. I mean, that's great, but I like the power of no. Just having a position of strength and leverage to say, that's not us. We're not doing it. Because I remember when you start out, you take every job because you have to, and it's always potentially the last job. And so part of a measure of success for me is turning down big jobs or big possible collaborations, because I've gotten smart enough to know what some of the red flags are. And that doesn't mean we don't mess it up sometimes.
And now you also know if you say yes to something that isn't right for your company, you know what it feels like to live with that on the back end. Like, it's one thing to be excited and get the sale and go, oh, well, maybe this is not the right one, but whatever, it's a big sale, it's important sale, whatever it is. But then living with it on the back end, and when you hate it the whole time, you're like, fuck.
Yeah. I mean, there are certain measures of success. I remember when one of the greatest people I know, and a woman named Joanna, who's been here for 5 years now, kind of an OG. I mean, one of the originals, man. I had her turn down a job for $150,000 because this guy was such a colossal asshole. It was actually easy because he came up to me. He tracked me down at a Dwell on Design show. He was going back with Joanna. The price kept going up. It was $150,000. It would have been by far our biggest job we'd ever done. And he kind of confronted me and was like asking, I said I didn't want to do it, and he started asking me about financials, and it was just weird. And he was pulling his kind of dick out and talking about all the big projects he'd done. And I was like, this is easy. We're not doing it. And I can recommend 5 other competitors who I'm friendly with that can do this for you, but we're not doing it.
Yeah.
And even for her, I mean, and so, but the point is, I paid her a commission. I was like, Joanna, you did all the work, but I'm proud to say no. And that was that was kind of memorable.
Now, you mentioned a little bit earlier the investors. So tell me, did you finance the company at all? Have you?
So it's all self-finance. I had a couple personal loans we paid back, but one thing that we did, because for me too, as important as it is to sort of sell and promote the design side of the business, maybe that's the primary goal. I also want to push the business side, and part of it is me. I have come around to accepting the fact that I do want to have some notoriety in this space. I mean, I do have some, but I want to. I want to write, and I want to speak, and I want to maybe do a podcast. And I spent a long time feeling like my girlfriend today said, "Don't be an asshole," and she was kind of joking. But I spent too much time thinking, like, did I sound like an asshole when I said that?
You mean don't be an asshole in our discussion?
On the podcast. Don't sound like a douchebag. Don't, and I don't, and I'm pretty sure I don't.
You don't to me.
Thank you.
I detect an edge.
Yeah, definitely.
I relate to that edge. I have one too.
Right.
I can be an asshole. I have enemies. I relate to that. You've got some elbows that you can throw. I feel that, but that's fine.
Yeah,
that's authentic, right?
Right.
You're from Philadelphia, for fuck's sake, aren't you?
I'm from Philadelphia, Bryn Mawr. I mean, I say Philly. Bryn Mawr is a pretty cushy place I grew up in, but yeah. So I mean, I definitely have an edge, but part of this kind of pushing the business side and my side is doing like Ink magazine, the Inc. 500, like in 2015, and so we did that. You put your numbers out there. We got 400 something, whatever. Fastest growing private companies, which is pretty cool. But frankly, it's something you pay for. It's like being on the best, top doctors in California list when you see them in the back of like an airline magazine. They paid to be there. But you got to have the numbers to make it. So we made it. And the point is, people started coming out of the woodwork. So private equity money, people like that, different opportunities. And so it's cool. It's flattering. It's also kind of annoying. But I also recognize for us to get to the next level, it can't be completely self-funded. I mean, the idea is, and you know this, but I'm sure a lot better than me. There are so many case studies of the guy or girl that was first to market getting passed by the second guy or girl that says, John did all these great things, but he fucked up this and that, and here's a lot of money, and now we're going to make it right. The guy that invented the Snuggie was like the second person supposedly to do the Snuggie. There was a pre-Snuggie. And so the point is, I don't want to hold on to this too long. Especially if, we have opportunities to really scale.
So you think eventually you'll probably raise some venture capital?
I think we will probably in the next 18 months. We've definitely kind of talked to a bunch of people. It's just a smarter move. Frankly, my goal in the next 18 months is to move us towards just towards that path towards a lifestyle brand where it's sales, marketing, customer service. And we're doing a lot of licensing deals, a lot of co-branding, as I mentioned, and getting out of production. I mean, at this point, we do going from 100% production when I was literally making it myself and cutting off fingers to 30% now. And we work with some of the biggest door manufacturers in the U.S., all domestic, but they have capacity that we'll never have, and we're not suited for. And that's okay. And that's where and that doesn't interest me.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. My buddy and one of the co-authors of my first book, Play Bigger, his name's Kevin Maney, and he just co-authored a legendary book I highly recommend called Unscaled. Unscaled. And his primary premise, John, is, heretofore, scaling up as a company was what you tried to do. And, you look at a GE or an IBM and that scale being that kind of size is a huge competitive advantage. His argument is today, primarily because of technology, you actually want to be unscaled. My new book is called Niche Down. So you unscale to niche down
right.
and you focus on that niche like a mofo. And because you're unscaled, that is to say, you haven't had to build the entire, if you'll allow me the jargon, value chain, and you've
Right.
got now partners doing the manufacturing for you, and you're focusing on brand design, and all this innovative partnerships and building your ecosystem and all the cool stuff that you're doing. Yeah, if there are people who can actually build to your quality, and if they're building in America or whatever the things that you care about from a build
Yeah.
perspective, I think Kevin would argue that's probably what you should do.
Right. And it does seem and I mean I agree. It doesn't mean that it hasn't created some discomfort here. Part of that is due to the messaging or the lack of it on my part, because we're at a place where we are moving in that direction, and we have 75 employees, and word is getting around that we are headed in that, but people don't understand what that means, and that's my fault for not being honest. I mean, because to be honest, I don't know exactly what it means. I know that's where we're headed, but I also probably could have done a better job of thinking about how that impacts other people with things like a telephone game, where one person hears one thing and then it goes down a line, and I get it. This affects people day to day. And
Well, and
I
the
get to
difference
be,
between you and them is you're an entrepreneur.
yeah,
You're somebody who literally has crawled through the fire. You're somebody who lived a huge percentage of your life with a massive amount of uncertainty and got to whatever
right,
level of comfort. And so it's you tell me. It sounds like you're somebody who can live with the uncertainty.
right.
But the average person, hey, fuck, I gotta, to quote George W. Bush, keep food on my family, and so uncertainty kind of not my friend.
Right. Well, look, I mean, I say all the time, and I don't mean to sound cavalier about it, but this is like house money. I never thought I'd be doing this, and I do think that um, I like the idea of risk. With that, though, comes the possibility of some collateral damage. And so, my partner Ivan, he's one of those people who's good at. Sorry, that's a saw. He's good at.
As long as it's not near any of your
Yeah, it's not
fingers.
in my fingers, exactly. He of telling people, like, going out, and he hasn't done this recently, but going out to the parking lot and saying, "Look at all these like new cars that employees have bought." And I don't think that way. I'm sorry about that. They don't realize how long I can talk. But anyway, so he's good about that kind of appreciation, and I'm just like, I get it when he points it out. I totally get it. But it's I don't know. That's not my focus now, and I do need to think
Yeah.
about the company.
Yeah. Well, and just to tie off on the investor thing, I have spent the majority of my business life in the Silicon Valley world, and have worked with a handful of the top venture firms here, and the vast majority of the companies I've been associated with in one way or another are venture-backed tech startups. And I know a lot of people like to bitch about VCs and talk about how they screw founders and this and that and the other. And those are some real things that you got to have your eyes open about. That
Right.
said, what I know, at least in the world that I know, I don't know the VCs that would potentially invest in you at all, but in the world that I know, in the tech VC world,
Mm-hmm.
the legendary VCs care a lot about the company, care a lot about the founders, care a lot about being involved with a company that makes a huge difference. We had, by way of example, we had Nancy Fund on the podcast. She is the co-founder of an outfit called Double Bottom Line Partners.
Mm-hmm.
And she's one of the principal creators of this new paradigm in venture capital called impact investing.
Mm-hmm.
And so their mantra, their mission is to have world-class returns. They want to make money, capitalists,
Right.
but equal to that, she wants to make a positive impact. So she was the seed investor, by way of example, in Tesla and Solar City and all this Elon Musk shit. And
Mm-hmm.
if you talk to the guys at Sequoia, by way of example, they say a very similar thing, which is they don't just want to make money, they want to make a big difference, they want to make an impact, companies that endure, all this good stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of these venture capitalists make a gigantic difference in the success of a company. And so I guess all I'm trying to say is,
Right.
if you were to find the right investors, not just money, not
Yeah.
assholes with spreadsheets, but people who
Right.
love your vision, people who kind of get who you and the team are, and want to help you take this to the place that it
Yeah.
logically could go,
Mm-hmm.
you might find that one or two of the right investors are actually big demarcation points for helping you get to a place, far beyond what you might otherwise get.
No, I mean, I appreciate that because we've been pretty reactive in terms of that so far. And we were kind of talking the other day. I want us to be more proactive in terms of let's target certain people, the kind of people you're talking about. Let's do some research. Because I mean, there are a lot of good people out there, really well-intentioned people, and there is a way to find a balance by being profitable and also doing some really great things. But that is something. And frankly, I mean, we had a conversation the other day. I'm one of those people, one of those owners that everything's in the business. And I need to think about personal security. And frankly, my son, who's 7, I need to think about that.
There's nothing wrong. And I talk to founders about this all the time. There's nothing wrong, particularly for a business like yours that is fairly far down the track, many years in, very well established, created a whole new niche, etc. There's nothing wrong with you. I'll make up some numbers. Let's say you went out and raised $10 million.
Right.
And you decided, you know what I want to do? And I'll make up the numbers. I'm going to put 2 in the bank and I'm going to put 8 in the business.
Right.
But you know what? I'm fucking putting 2 in the bank because I started off by cutting off my fingers. I've put my heart and soul into this thing. Yeah. And maybe I want to buy a nice car, or maybe I just want to put it in the bank and feel good, or maybe whatever the fuck. I don't give a fuck what you want to do with it. But my point is, it is totally fine for a founder like yourself in the kind of situation you're in to say, look, I'm going to take a little off the table here.
Right. No, you're right. And we had somebody we talked to that they seem resistant to that, and that was kind of a deal breaker.
Listen, I'm working with some young entrepreneurs right now who are in a very similar situation. Bootstrap. They brought in some angel money from wonderful kind of folks that they knew that have been incredibly helpful in the business, but they've never done a real, what, in our world we'd call a Series A and that kind of stuff. And we're now talking about that. And we've had this exact discussion. And my coaching to them was, listen, if you're talking to investors who object to they're about 10 years in, if I remember right, if after 10 years of you guys making almost no money, because of course as a founder, you don't pay yourself very much. And you do, that's what founders do. Like, hey, fucking A, maybe you want to buy a fucking house. It's California we live in. It's expensive. Like that's a healthy thing. If I'm that investor putting the 10 million in, I want John to feel good about the next 10 years.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I feel good about you telling me all that because we have, as I said, been more reactive, and we need to be proactive. And I do feel a sense of urgency, mortality, whatever you want to call it, with my future. I'm hopefully in great shape. I'm not going anywhere, but and part of what's great about doing that program that sort of started with offshoot of Inc. magazine, an amazing guy named Louis Schiff and Norm Brodsky, who's a pretty well-known entrepreneur and teacher, part of it too, is encouraging us to think about things like that and think about if you want to sell your business, what that means. If you want to take on investment, just stuff that I started this group a year ago, and it's all kind of based on the East Coast, and I was the one person from the West Coast and 17 people East Coast, and I didn't have anything like that. And what I found was right away they were all in these sort of CEO groups and something called Vestige, I guess, which everybody knows except me. And I felt
you were too busy building a legendary company.
Yeah, I guess that's my excuse. But I did feel kind of like, well, shit, I need this, and I definitely have a sense of community with these guys, and they're all guys and women, and they're all amazing. But I think that's important too, kind of like you said. I mean, I used to joke about, I still do, when we go to these design shows, and we used to do a lot more, 5 or 6 a year, Toronto, Vancouver, LA, New York, Chicago, whatever. And I'd see my friends, the same companies all the time, 6 times a year, all the same guys and girls. And I said, it's like design camp, because I'll see you for like 4 days, a couple times a year, and we'll bond. We'll go out and have a few drinks, or we'll act stupid, or we'll just shoot the shit. And that's as important as anything. And then I won't see you again for 2 months, or 3 months. And that's one thing that I love. When you talk about an ecosystem, what I want to do in the future is do a lot more collaborations, working with people that I love and respect. Companies that I have a lot of admiration. A company called LOLL, Lol Designs, out of Duluth, Minnesota, makes 100% recycled milk bottle plastic furniture. This is a major brand. Design Within Reach sells them. Room and Board. And these were guys that started out making skateboard ramps and then ended up founding Epicurean, the cutting board company, with offcuts from making the skateboard ramps. And then sort of parlay that into this amazing outdoor furniture company. And that's a company, when I say like that's the Rushmore of companies, I look up to them, and not only what they do, but the way they do it. These are guys that are a little bit older than me, and nobody parties as hard or has as much fun as they do. And it's genuine. I'd always be sitting there, halfway present or whatever. These guys have fun, and they make an incredible product.
How do you spell the company name?
So it's once you see their stuff, you've seen it everywhere. LOL, LOLL, based on
LOLL.
LOL Designs. So based on the idea of lollygagging, just sort of laying around. But yeah. CBS this morning, there's a book out called like a husband and wife traveled around the country and identified all these really cool businesses and communities that have created these own ecosystems. And so these guys are based in Duluth, and they've created this amazing thing. And it is like a lifestyle. And again, I was with them in New York. We were doing a show together, separately together. And I just love picking their brains. And the guy, one of the co-founders, Greg, was telling me the story of, they grew up next to the guy literally a mile away that invented rollerblades, and he needed somewhere to demo his rollerblades. And so they found this material, and they started making skate ramps, and then it became something else. And again, that's somebody you should talk to. I mean, these guys are unbelievable.
That's great.
And they were on CBS Sunday Morning a couple of weeks ago as part of this book.
I must have missed them. I do love that show.
But no, again, it's so I learned as much from them, people like them, and that's why I'm saying I'd love to get together a group of friends that own businesses and sort of network that way, help each other.
Yeah, in the real estate, I have a bunch of friends in the real estate industry, and we're starting to build houses and do a little real estate investing, my wife and I. They have this thing they call them. I love this term because it sounds so, super friendsy. Yeah. They call it masterminding. They have these mastermind groups, and that's exactly what they do. They're like, there's support groups for entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
And they come in all sorts of flavors and sizes. But look, we all need somebody to talk to about this shit, right?
No, again, in this group, it's all founders. And I'd say the range is from $1 million to one of the guys, several defense contractors that $150 million businesses. And so it's fascinating. It's, again, and what you always find is somebody that does something the complete opposite of me is so much more interesting to talk to anyway, because you realize there are some differences, but there aren't differences. And for me, it gets my juices like it's motivating. I do sit around and say, well, shit, man, we did this much and Bob did that much. Not in a competitive way, because I want to see everybody succeed, because they're all amazing people. If you're an asshole, I don't want to see you succeed. But it's good, and it's fun too. It's a social thing, but it's also a great learning tool too.
Well, I'm glad you're getting out there and masterminding with other.
I'm a mastermind.
Fantastic entrepreneurs. Well, John, this has been an incredible discussion. Anything else you want to touch on before we kick out of this wave?
No, I mean, I do feel a sense of pressure, and I hope I was entertaining enough, or I don't know. I mean, I don't want to let anybody down. I know, again, I could keep talking.
Well, I did actually want to ask you one other thing, if you're open to it. Yep. I got the sense from you that, being a dad means a lot to you, and being a dad maybe has changed you, and maybe a little bit changed about how you think about your business, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. So I'm just curious to ask you what being a dad means to you.
That's a great question. I will say that, so my son's name is Bo. Bo is, he'll be 7 this fall. And I don't, I'm different. It's interesting. It's pointless to compare yourself to friends or other people. I'm deeply active in his life. So his mom and I split up about 1.5 years ago. And we have the best situation possible in terms of him, 50-50 custody. He's about 100 yards away from me. Um, eh, it's like night and day. I was telling somebody yesterday. It's hard to imagine my life before him. Um, I'm consumed with just him and what's going on. I spent another measure of success. I spent the last 2 years managing his baseball team, and because they're from Philadelphia, they're the Phillies, and it's 5, 6, and 7 year olds, and because it's Southern California, it's competitive, and I'm also on the board of directors of his league, and it's a big time investment, but being able to do that. I was telling somebody again this past couple days that I was away. I remember being in Long Beach when I first met his mom, and maybe 9 years ago, and I would drive home from work every day at 5 o'clock around, and I would see these dads out there coaching their sons, and I was like, I want to be able to do that. Like, how do those guys do that? And I'm at a place where I've done that the last 2 years, and I'll continue to. Now, I'm different than most of those moms and dads because I have a lot more flexibility than they do, and I've grown to people make it work when they want to make it work. It's so he's everything. I don't want to get emotional talking about him. He is, he teaches me things every day. All the cliches.
Yeah.
And I take him everywhere.
And my parents split when I was 5, and but like you, I had a dad who was super committed to still being a dad, and to the point on taking you everywhere. That was my dad's attitude. Was like, well, I'm going skiing, you're coming skiing. I got this meeting. What the fuck? You're coming to, like, he didn't bend his, I mean, of course he accommodated us and did things. I don't mean that, but
right.
I see parents today and it's as though they architect their whole life around the kid. Mm-hmm. Whereas my dad and my mom, she's a single working mom. They're like busy doing their life and the kid comes along.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a different paradigm.
Yeah. And I'm different than my friends. My friends all had kids when they were in their late 20s, early 30s. So one of my very closest friends, he's similar to me. He's got a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. But he's deeply involved in his business, and I'm constantly hammering him like, you gotta make time, and it's going to go by fast. And so I'm probably different than most of my friends in terms of, like, it's a priority. Nothing else matters, and I try to encourage people that work here the same thing. There's nothing you're going to tell me if it's related to your kid that's going to be like, that's not the most important thing.
Yeah. All right, John, anything else you want to touch on?
That's it, Chris. I mean, no, I appreciate it. Again, I feel like I have a lot to live up to. Hopefully I didn't let you down.
You didn't let me down in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
Tell what's your gal's name?
My girlfriend?
Yeah.
My girlfriend's name is Stephanie. She's
tell Stephanie you were the opposite of an asshole.
Oh, I wasn't an asshole.
Wonderful.
She doesn't think that, luckily. I've never gotten along with anybody the way I do her, so I appreciate that.
Well, you could tell you weren't an asshole today, and I have been looking forward to our conversation pretty much since I heard of the existence of your company.
Thank you.
And yeah, I really admire and respect what you're doing, and I also want you to know I appreciate how you've been as real as anybody could be in our conversation, and
thank you.
That's super cool.
Well, I appreciate it, Christopher, and I'd love to meet you and your wife sometime. And
well, we want to come down and see you. We're customers and we're huge fans, and we'd love to see your facility.
We'll give you a tour. Where are you guys based?
We're in Santa Cruz.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah, it's a short Southwest flight.
And I've got some great companies when we get off this. I'd love to recommend that you should reach out to.
Yeah, these guys, Lull Design, sound incredible.
Lull Designs. I'll tell you another real quick. A company called Cerno, CERNO. Fantastic lighting company in Laguna Beach. Three best friends that grew up together, and they have an incredible company.
I'm trying to collect legendary. We call them small-y entrepreneurs. The more bootstrap entrepreneurs, and particularly ones that have done what you've done, which is define a whole new niche.
Thank you. Well, yeah, like I said, I definitely want to stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother.
Thanks,
stay legendary.
You too. Take care.
You too. Whew. John Macdonald, Semi-Handmade. Boy, if that doesn't get you fired up, if that doesn't motivate you to be open and to go for it in your life, I don't know what will. All right. We would like to thank our good friends at Semi-Handmade, IKEA hackers, their system, our doors, your home. Check out semihandmadedoors.com. Our new book, Niche Down, How to Become Legendary by Being Different. Go to nichedownbook.com, find out how to get the book, find out how to get your free bonuses, and get ready to niche down. OneLifeFullyLived.org. Dream, plan, and live your best life. We're the nonprofit trying to make a difference to you and, frankly, everyone else. Check out OneLifeFullyLived.org. Our good friends at the Front Row Factor, John Vroman, this is his new book. It's his podcast. Check out the podcast. Check out the book, The Front Row Factor. Transform your life with the art of moment making. Speaking of podcasts we love, the podcast by Hal Elrod and John Berghoff, Achieve Your Goals. Of course, Hal is the incredible genius behind the Miracle Morning series of books. He wrote the foreword to Niche Down, which we're grateful for. The foreword by itself is an awesome read, and I would highly recommend the podcast Achieve Your Goals. Speaking of other things we love, Spiro.ai. This is Adam Honig's company. Spiro is for salespeople and sales managers who like to make money, and a company I'm super proud to be associated with. Speaking of people I'm proud of, check out willvlittle.com. Will was a guest here on Legends and Losers. Will Little is one of the most inspiring people I have ever met. Nobody is on their smartphone when Will Little is speaking. He's a great author and a legendary speaker. Check out willvlittle.com. And the great people at the World Wildlife Fund. Check out WWF.org, because our planet and wildlife matter. Now, I must remind you that this oddcast is the sole property of the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network, and we would love you just a little bit extra if you share the shit out of it. If you love the show, please share it. Please give us a review. Please. It makes a giant difference, and thank you. We must remind you that all rights do remain disturbed. This oddcast was produced clearly in a studio that contains nuts. Teach entrepreneurship. Teach carpentry. Listen to Chris Cornell. Never forget the tragically hip. Don't forget never to jog near a prison. Introduce two people you love to two podcasts you love. We hope we're one of them. But hey, getting into podcasting can be tough. Help a friend of yours, show them how to do it on their smartphone, their tablet, whatever, and you'll introduce somebody to a whole new world. Thank you, Dandy Candy. I love you, Mom and Dad. And hey, Colin, this oddcast really ties the room together, doesn't it? Today, our deepest apologies go out to Marcus Rust, CEO of Roseacre Farms. Sorry, Marcus, we just ran out of time for you. That's it, my friends. Thank you so much. Be legendary, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.